Good night. This is Carlos Cesar, and this is the Neighborhood News Show. It's Saturday, 7 o'clock, and you are watching Channel 95 on your cable. And John is not going to be here for a few weeks because he's out in work. I believe he's somewhere in Washington, D.C. It's part of work, and we need to keep doing our show. So I will be bringing in some guests along the way. But anyway, we're back, and after 3 or 4 weeks that we had for vacation, and believe me, I didn't rest much during this 3 or 4 weeks, but we are back. And always we bring guests, and who I have here with me, it's to me it's a very special guest, because we're trying to move Fall River forward. And what that is, we're going to be talking about Fall River economic development. And the guests I have here, Robert, thank you for being my guest today, and thank you for coming to Fall River, because now we, through your eyes, we're going to see a different Fall River, and we're going to be talking about a different Fall River. And like I posted, we will have a chance for a different approach on economic development for our city. But we're having a meeting Thursday, so 2 days from today. We're having a meeting at 6:30 at Fonseca School. I want to invite anybody that are interested in hear Mr. Lee do his presentation and his view about Fall River and the chances that we have to turn all this around, and Fall River has a bright future ahead. But so that's going to happen 2 days from today. I want to invite everybody that wants to hear his presentation. I want to invite everybody to come with open arms and with ideas, because without ideas we cannot accomplish much too. Everybody that will come with a different opinion, it's fine, but only a different opinion. With that being said, and everybody has been talking to me about Mr. Lee, is who's Mr. Lee? How come Mr. Lee moved to Fall River? You know, after two conversations that he had, and I have to say, and again, I have to thank CJ for being always on the other side of the fence and talking. It's like a filter. CJ is like a filter. He knows how to filter all this information and get to the right people. And I want to thank him today, because he's on a control room, like happened like 3 years ago when we started, and he's on the studio on the control. Thank you, CJ. So, Mr. Lee, who's Mr. Lee? How come you are that crazy to come down to Fall River?
That crazy. Well, thank you, Carlos. Thank you for having me here. And thank you and CJ and Skip for being astute enough to realize that there are others outside of your circle here in Fall River who might have something worthwhile to offer. That has been a struggle of mine for the last several years. Once I saw that I had a talent for spying economic opportunities such as Zephyr City, there's just almost a natural, both a natural and a man-made tendency in local communities to just eliminate anything from the outside, and it prevents them from a lot of possibilities, I believe. And so I have, in terms of why I'm up here, I have for many, many years I have been wanting to move to the New England area, Boston more specifically, I guess, because I saw Boston as being within the United States, assuming I wanted to stay in the United States, a place of generally higher intellect, the opportunity to engage with people and things like that, just socially, if nothing else socially. And so I've had things that have prevented me from getting up here for years, and during that process actually is when I discovered that I've always been a good problem solver, and I can give you several anecdotes to illustrate that in my life. And so I, in working for a city I love, Savannah, Georgia, doing some things in sort of the architectural realm, I discovered that they had a lot of problems, economic problems, that had prevented them from having the kind of philanthropic money that other cities take for granted. So I said, well, what's the problem here? And I looked at the economics and I saw issues there. There was no, in the South, people like to talk about old money and things like that, but there's not the kind of old money in some of these older cities that you have in present day Boston and Philadelphia and New York and Atlanta and things like that. It's not the kind of corporate and heavy foundation money. So, so I saw they didn't have that, and I looked at the economics, and I started looking for opportunities for Savannah. Instead of it's always been a port city ever since the day it was founded, and more recently they went into tourism, but they have a lot of problems there. And I started seeing just tremendous opportunities that nobody else there had been able to spy. And I did a lot of work and on trying to bring these to the community. But just like I was saying, there develops within communities first of all a natural instinct to be wary of outsiders, and then there also develop within communities locally an economic clique tends to happen. Special interests tend to want to prevent change that would affect their own personal interest. So, and I am not a salesperson. That is the worst of all my qualities in life. And trying to convey what I see and what I know has always been very difficult for me. And so that is especially why I'm really pleased that I have to say I found the same thing was true in New England in many cases. And it was my second go around coming back to Fall River after I tried last fall, and when I contacted CJ, and we kind of got the ball rolling. And as it happened in my personal life, things had developed to the point where I could actually make a move up to New England, and that's why I said I'm going to go to Fall River. So I see it as both an opportunity for Fall River and an opportunity for me to finally get to have the knowledge that's in my head and the talent I have be utilized.
And I have to say that when CJ, it's been a couple of months, at least a couple of months, when CJ approached the city council and he mentioned that he was in contact with somebody, and that started to I start getting interest on it, because so far we've been putting all this work in one person, one individual that it's supposed to run the economic development. And for years we've been sitting on the same thing. We've been sitting on the waterfront. Every election comes around, that's what we talk about, is the waterfront. To me, sounds like everybody's putting the eggs on the same basket, okay? And they use that to run for office. And when that came the time that CJ approached, I saw, asking questions to CJ, but where's this person? He's really coming down. And finally, I had the call from CJ. Said, "You want to meet him? He's in town. Let's sit down and meet him." And you, on our first meeting, you showed me kind of in words your background and what did you accomplish when anybody else thought was impossible to accomplish. And I would like you to tell us one of those impossible dreams for others, but you thought that was going to happen and you made it happen. And I know you have a lot of those, but if you could probably
this is one that you've already heard me mention.
Exactly.
I'm not sure
I know you have.
I'm not sure which particular.
I heard a lot of them, but I will give you opportunity to talk about one.
And maybe what you're alluding to is the opportunities that I see that to accomplish that nobody particularly saw, specifically Fall River or in general anywhere.
No, but the area that you came from. I know
the area. In Savannah had. What I found with Savannah is that it actually had a great deal of opportunities that, but like I said, in any community, people tend to not have the perspective that somebody from outside might have who has an interest in this sort of thing and likes to problem solve with this sort of thing. I grew up in Atlanta, and I like to refer to that as like a college. I mean, if you're paying attention to things and you like civic matters and things like that, and I have I'm conservative in terms of money spending and public dollar spending and things like that. Atlanta was like a laboratory of watching what could happen, what could come, and both the good and the bad in terms of development such as that. And when I looked at Savannah later, I saw opportunities to obtain more direct flights into the airport. And I knew how critical that was growing up in Atlanta. And as many of you may know now, Atlanta has the busiest airport in the world, not just the country, but the world. And that was, that began as the foresight of some city leaders back in the early 20th century, who Atlanta was not, the city, anything like the city it is today in the South. It was on par with other cities such as, Birmingham and Charlotte and things like that. But the city leaders said, I think there's something about this flying thing, in the early, in the 1920s when flying started becoming prevalent. And so they set out to create their airport and realized that was going to be the way of the future. And a city like Birmingham, they just sat on their haunches. They thought that they were sitting in a good position, sort of the rail transit center of the South and such as that. And Atlanta just took off, and left Birmingham in the dust. So I guess, my knowledge having grown up in Atlanta and knowing how critical an airport can be for a city's economic growth, one of the first things I wanted to do, I won't say the first thing, but one of the things that came to my mind once I started looking at where Savannah was in the great geographical picture was that it did sit at a point that it could obtain a lot more, be a little bit more of a hub airport than it is today. Right now, it's nothing more than an O&D airport, which is origin and destination airport. But Atlanta's airport is really, it's mostly a hub for transfers. And 75% of the traffic that goes through the Atlanta airport is actually going from and to other places, locations. So that's not, so the size of the Atlanta's airport, the busyness of the Atlanta's airport is not reflective of the size of the city itself. So having an airport can act in several regards, and its existence can be there for different reasons. In Savannah, I just happened to catch wind of the fact that it's set at a point that was at the apex of two triangles coming together, what I refer to as the vacation triangle of the Caribbean, Florida at the very tip of that, and then across the Caribbean, and then the heavily populated Midwest, Canada and Midwest and stuff like that, and would in fact actually be an actual hub for an airline who serviced largely that vacation and leisure traffic. And actually leisure traffic is 50% of airline traffic today. I happened to notice that, and I went back and then did an actual statistical analysis, and I don't think I've even approached this with you. And it would take me a few minutes to tell you the details of that, but a statistical analysis that actually showed that Savannah did actually sit on a very good axis between the average origin point in this great population center from the Midwest to the Northeast, and the destination center that was in this vacation triangle. And I did that through weighing latitude and longitudinal airport points based upon the airline traffic, going to and at all those different destinations, and created a line, an axis, showing the what was basically the average travel route, and it came right close to Savannah, and Savannah was almost midway on this thing, and. Trying and here's one anecdote in terms of that'll indicate how not all economic developers have talent and even an understanding of the fundamentals for growing their economy. A newly appointed economic developer in Savannah totally could not grasp what I was saying here, and was so focused on tourism as their way to grow Savannah's economy that he only saw that they shouldn't be wasting their airport's use on anybody else's tourism, going to vacation spots than anybody for Savannah, and he could not see the advantages, the larger advantages economically of having many direct flights to all sorts of points all the way across the country. Coming into Savannah, that was not the first thing that came to his mind. Actually, it wasn't the second or third thing that came to his mind, because he never even gave it another thought. And so that is one of the things I saw for Savannah, that it did have a great, but I have no inroads into the airline industry. I've tried to broach this with a couple of airlines that were well suited to take advantage of this because of their existing market situation and their existing facilities and such as that. I mean, I look pretty deep into these things, and I don't just frivolously propose things that I don't see a pathway to achieve. And when I say a pathway, I mean a pathway that is a good business sense.
I mean, and again, the way I see it is, on the situation that Fall River is right now, we have nothing to lose. At this point, we have nothing to lose. The city economically development's been stopped, and it moves one step forward, two back. Because every time they try to do a deal or to make a deal with a company, they don't do the right way. Then people know the law, people know it was not done the right way, and go after them. So it's like it's never done the right way. And I, personally, I don't have anything against the person that is in charge of it. But if you work for a company and you don't do, or you don't accomplish anything, you're going to last 1 year, 2 years. I'm going to give you 5 years. But 30 years become just a money grab at this point. And we never had nobody to see it different, to look at the economic development in a different way, to put different ideas on the table. And and this is like, you come now and you're going to be the people's voice, you're going to be the people's ideas. Because guess what? You come from a different state, that you have no connections on the city, and you're gonna just see it the way it is. If you drive down the street and something catches your eye, you're going to see the way it is. You don't have people telling you, oh, this belongs to this person and this belongs to that person, and then, and then the building, okay, then we're not going to touch the building. Because here's the thing, and it's another thing that I really like on you is you are all into preservation and about history. And you want to combine the two things, economic development with preservation and history. And we have that, we have plenty of that to give it to you, for you to work. And those are your tools. That's the tools you use to see economic development, which people in charge, they don't see the connection. They see an old historic building as an old historic building that belongs to this person. And they see this waterfront that we want to develop for the past 30 years. But really, we're not moving forward because, again, the connections that we don't want to touch this, we don't want to touch that person because this person supports this politic and this person supports this politic. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason that Fall River is not moving forward. And having you coming down and the residents of Fall River is going to embrace you and is going to see you as the fresh air that comes to town, and you're going to tell her how it is. You're probably going to see a project that's been working for so long and never moving, because you're going to see it will never move forward because of this reason. You know what I'm saying? So you're kind of going to just enroll the project, and why this project seems like so good for the community, but it's been sitting for 10 years, is not moving on. Why? So that's why I think you're going to have a lot of work, because Fall River, historically, it's huge, and having it's pretty much a city that started by immigrants, and here you find French and you Portuguese and Cambodians, and so that's why you go down one street, you look like you're in France, and you go down another street, you see a Chinese building. You know what I'm saying? So because of that, it's so rich in history, and every ethnic brings their history to Fall River. And using that, putting together with economic development, you're going to have, a lot of work to do. But I want to say this. I want to remind again people that in 2 days we're going to have his presentation for Fall River economic development for Fall River. I want to invite you to come down and listen to Mr. Lee. I know you're going to like his ideas. I know he's been in town just for 2 or 3 weeks, so he didn't have much chance, but he already saw plenty to talk about. And next week, he will come back again to talk about Fall River economic development, because by then you already had the meeting at Fonseca School. Remember, Thursday night, the 16th at 6:30 at the community center, the community room on Fonseca School. I know we could spend in here another hour just talking about the accomplishments that you did and your background. But I want to get this up there because this was the few people that has those connections. They're already asking me, who is this Mr. Lee that now from nowhere decided to come down to Fall River? Mr. Lee is not a suit person. It's not a very nice dress-up person. He's like this. It's one of us, but has a lot of potential. And you want to give us that potential to us. So how you think this half an hour? I know you were nervous. You don't like TV.
It's the difficulty is that it can be so complex.
Yes.
In my mind, it's not complex, but getting that information out to those who are not sitting in the position, don't have the perspective to take that and understand it readily. That is the difficulty. It's almost like there's got to be an education process just in order to get people to the point where they can then judge the ideas. And because if you don't have a certain perspective, then you're immediately just going to say, well, that's just crazy, and so it's keeping people's minds open long enough, and more importantly, having them be willing to spend the time thinking on this stuff, and that's what it takes. It's not something I. All my knowledge, the knowledge that I have and everything like that didn't come up just like that.
Exactly.
This is from being very young. I'm 58 years old now, and I've been in tune to this stuff since I was a kid, and looked at stuff. I used to collect, things out of the newspaper in Atlanta on developments this is in the early 70s or even maybe late 60s. This slow progress over time of paying attention and seeing things. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to think, well, the adults, aren't they brilliant, and all these wonderful things, and I thought how wonderful all these developments were in Atlanta and such as that. And I look back on some of these attempts and I go, oh my God, what were they thinking? Just a waste of public dollars. If you look at the Atlanta transit system, as a matter of fact, it was I go into that, I don't want to do it right now, but it was a horrible waste of public tax dollars. The way that it was done, had policies been implemented, good policies been implemented, it could have been a useful way to implement transit in Atlanta, but as it turned out, it was a monstrous waste of, and actually one of the reasons I believe that there was so much cutback on mass transit by the federal government later was the inefficacy of the system in Atlanta and all the money that it imported to it. So.
And I think we are out of time. I want to thank you again for coming to Fall River, especially for coming to Fall River to be that fresh
glad
breeze.
To be here.
And I hope that you love Fall River as much we do, and that you're thinking about staying for longer than that.
Last night I was walking on the ridge down the south end, what I refer to as Upper Tiverton, now instead of North Tiverton community. And just saying, this could be the San Francisco of the East, if people really wanted to put the work into doing it. But we'll see.
It's a lot of potential, like I said. And Mr. Lee, thank you again. And remember, Thursday night, the 16th at 6:30, Fonseca School, the change or the Fall River still have a chance for economic development. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.